We're going to talk about Latin America today. So, we're going to kind of look at some of the issues that are going on today and kind of how they're dealing with it, kind of how the people are interacting with each other and with the environment and all that. So, pretty interesting stuff. So, let's take a look. So, we're going to start with agriculture. So, three-fourths of Latin Americans live in the cities, like we talked about before, but they still depend on agriculture for a portion of their incomes, as do many North Americans as well. But Latin American countries do export much of what their farms grow. So, things that they would export would be like crops like bananas, sugarcane, and coffee. And much of that we purchase here. So bananas, any banana you get is coming out of South America. So large agricultural estates are owned by wealthy landowners or corporations called latifundias, and these farms are highly mechanized and return huge profits. And that's because they are so mechanized that they don't have very many laborers. They don't have to have as many because of the technology they're using, and so it's an easy way to keep labor costs down, and it's a good way for these corporations to make a lot of money. So mini fundias are smaller plots of land that are extensive or intensively farmed by rural farmers in order to feed their families. And so these guys are known as campesinos. And the campesinos rarely own these farms. Usually they're owned by wealthy landowners, and then the campesinos will rent them and they'll pay money so that they can farm on them and then they can help feed their families. So many minifundia owners have been encouraged by governments to combine their lands into cooperatives, and so that way the campesinos they would have a small amount of ownership. This is still rare. The governments are trying to encourage this, but there's still a very huge gap between the rich and the poor, and it's become an issue, especially in regards to poverty and resource allocation with some of these campesinos. So cash crops are grown all over Latin America, and they are produced mainly on the large latifundias, like we were talking about. So some of the countries do have suitable grasslands to raise livestock. So in the north, in the Llanos, region, and then in the southern Pampas region. Remember, I said the Pampas is the kind of the breadbasket of South America. So this is where most of the crops are made. And then they also obviously raise livestock like cattle in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. But problems do arise when the countries depend on one or two large exported cash crops, because if there's like, let's say your economy is entirely dependent on, let's say, cotton, but there's a natural disaster, some kind of natural disaster that takes out the cotton, well, your economy is destroyed. Okay, so having like we learned with Venezuela, having a blended economy, something more similar to what the United States has, is a good idea. Okay, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, especially when it comes to economies. So most countries in Latin America are designated as developing countries. And so these are countries that are actually working towards greater manufacturing and technologies. So we don't say like first, second, third world anymore. So it's basically developing and developed or underdeveloped. It would be like a third world nation. But most of these kind of fall in the middle there. But service industries like banking and restaurants have grown dramatically, but they don't actually produce goods. So um, they're not making things to go sell. So it is an issue because you need goods to sell in order to make more money. So maquiladoras are factories that are owned by foreign corporations. So in particular, the U.S. and Japanese companies have been attracted to Latin America, primarily because of low labor costs. But there's also less strict environmental and worker laws, so there's less regulation in those countries. And so maquiladoras help Latin Americans. They do provide jobs to the Latin Americans, but the products that are built don't actually really help Latin America so much because the U.S. company or the Japanese company is the one making the money, so that all counts towards like the GDP of those countries, and then they're the ones who are profiting. So the products built, like I said, don't really help that out the country. And then in addition, there's pollution and labor issues that go on in those factories, so that becomes an issue as well. Developing native industries. So Latin American countries are working hard to develop the more homegrown industries. And so the countries lack the financial resources to do this. Excuse me. And have been forced to take loans from foreign countries that are hard to pay back, in particular the United States, and help from the loaner countries uh, is actually causing these countries to kind of control Latin American corporations and those countries a little bit more. So, like the U.S. and Japan, for example, have heavy investment in Latin America, and they have a very large say in how the economies are run in Latin American countries. So this right here is the 2016-17 growth forecast. So this is looking at the GDPs of Latin America. So you can see some are growing, some are falling. So like Venezuela, for example, like we've talked about them, that is not looking good. But others are moving up. Okay, now this is a couple years old, so some things have gotten better, some things have gotten worse. So, but this gives you a pretty good idea of kind of where growth is happening. So you see like Dominican, they're going up. Panama, we're seeing like Colombia, Peru, those guys are moving up. Okay, so transportation and communication. So one huge problem for Latin America is actually distributing the goods and the services more efficiently. So it's resource allocation. So there are a few good roads or rail systems, especially as you go through rural areas. So this isolates the population because it's not easy to move from place to place. So it isolates them from receiving basic goods and services that we take for granted. But they have developed better communication systems like phones, television, radio, and internet. But a lot of this is mostly limited to the big cities. They are working to this day on trying to get more communication services to the rural areas. The environment. So Latin American countries are working toward more sustainable development, and so that is where technological and economic growth does not deplete the human and natural resources of a region. This has been very difficult, in particular with the rainforest. So the rainforest, in particular, has paid the price because it is really difficult to tell people, and it's not necessarily big corporations that are destroying it. It's the small guy. It's the guy who's just trying to feed his family. It's really difficult to tell that guy that if he doesn't chop that tree down, like that's going to save the earth, but his family's going to starve. So it's really difficult to make that distinction. So the rainforest has really, really taken a hit in large part to people trying to sell timber and wood and that. So this is from the United Nations. These are the Sustainable Development Goals. So things like they don't want poverty anymore. That's never going to happen. But these are goals. Zero hunger, once again, never going to happen. Good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action. So that what that means is they're trying to reduce the effects of climate change, life below water. So they're trying to reduce pollution there, life on land, trying to make that better, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and then partnerships for the goals. So that's getting all the countries to work together. So they are trying, but some things are really difficult to achieve, like no poverty and zero hunger. It's a lofty goal, but it's not realistic. Okay, environmental issues. So deforestation, like I've alluded to before, with the rainforest is definitely an issue. So that's the clearing or destruction of forests. So rainforests are sources for the Earth's oxygen, for plant and animal species, and even medicines. A lot of medicines we have come out of the rainforest. Now, our oxygen, a lot of our oxygen in the world actually comes from the oceans. So from the plant life in the oceans. So the fact that the rainforest is going away isn't as big of an impact as people would have you believe, but still, I mean, it does definitely impact the world. Um, but governments believe that they need to clear rainforests to build their own economy for like farming, ranching, industry, transportation. So they have been clearing a lot of it, and you can see kind of what that's look like here and here. And you can see too, they're trying to plant. See, these look like younger trees. They're trying to plant, like replace what they've torn down, but it's a slow go. So countries around the world have worked to stop the clearing of the rainforest. So slash and burn techniques. So what they would do is they would clear the forest by cutting down the trees and then letting them dry out, and then they would burn them. And so then the ash from those fires would actually fertilize the soil, and then they would be able to plant more. But this has proven a very temporary fix because the nutrients are usually washed away because it's still raining there a lot. So within 2 years, the land is unsuitable for farming or raising livestock because nothing's going to grow there, and all the animals have eaten the newly planted grasses, and nothing's growing there because there's no nutrients anymore. And so what do they have to do? More slash and burn. Okay, so that it's making more and more of the rainforest go away. So more land is now being set aside for conservation, and like I said before, they are trying to reforest the rainforest here. So this is where they plant young trees or the seeds of trees in order to try to have the rainforest again. Scientists don't really know if the damage to Latin American rainforests can be undone. They're trying to fix it, but it is slow go because it took a lot of years for that rainforest to become a thing. So it is definitely slow go, but they are doing what they can to help the environment. Okay, that's all I got for you guys today. Don't forget to do your homework. That's the acrostic. Okay, make sure you write complete sentence. Do not just copy and paste from the notes. Okay, the whole idea is to get you to write a sentence that just has information from the notes. So tell me things that you learned. That's really what I want you to do. Okay? All right, I hope you all have a good day.